Remember in this video when I said this? Let me know what you would put on this list, and I'm thinking of making a top 5 best and worst bosses, so let me know if you want to see that. Yeah, I thought at first that would be a good video to make, but as I started thinking about what my top 5 Castle Crashers boss fights would be, I drew a blank. I started having a bit of a crisis that I'm sure many Castle Crashers fans have at some point in their lives. Are the bosses in Castle Crashers even good? What a stupid question, you're probably saying to yourself. Of course the bosses in Castle Crashers are good. Right? Right? I'm not gonna sit here in my comfy chair and tell you that every boss fight in this game is bad. In fact, most of them aren't bad at all. But when you get to be as good as I am at the game, you start to realize that a lot of these bosses are lacking in some way or another. I'm gonna go over every boss fight this game has to offer and tell you everything I like and don't like about them. This is my whiny YouTube rant video and I get to pick the format. Let me say first off that in terms of visual design, they are all super cool and unique. Every boss fits perfectly into their respective levels and are generally paced very well, meaning that they often don't last longer or shorter than they need to. I really like every boss on a conceptual level. It's just after fighting every boss like 100 times, I'm not nearly as excited to fight them as I used to be. Plus, I've been playing through Hollow Knight again, and dude, those bosses are so much fun. First boss is the War Machine. This one is perfectly fine as the first mini-boss in the game, but it ultimately doesn't do much. It spews out barbarians and fires cannonballs and just charges at you. It's a fine boss, but one that doesn't leave a very large impact, which first bosses usually never do, except in like all of these games. I can't put down a cup. I can't put down a cup. The first real boss is appropriately called the Barbarian Boss. The intro to this one I really like. This guy's entrance was really cool and set a good tone for the bosses in the future. This boss is actually one of my favorites. I like the setting, first of all, being in a big arena with tons of other barbarians. I like how they'll block the screen for a second. It's a nice detail that adds a bit of extra challenge to a pretty easy fight, all things considered. And then there's the big guy himself. I'm not going to mention every time I like a boss's aesthetics because, like I said, I enjoy every boss's aesthetics, but the Barbarian boss particularly I love. Plus he's got a lot of different moves that he does and ends with getting it on with Blossom. This is easily one of my favorites in the game. I don't actually have much issue with this one.
Oh, these are pretty cool bananas.
As long as you are out here, that troll is your mother.
Hilda's a troll!
This is another mini-boss technically, so I don't think it needs to be super fancy. The troll mother gets the job done, you know what I mean? Originally I was going to make a comment about how impossible this boss is on insane mode, but I'm actually cracked and it's really easy. The catfish boss is one that for the longest time I had myself convinced that I actually liked. That opinion has since changed. I don't like the level that this boss is in. I made that clear in this video. I just think this one is really slow and easily cheesed. It doesn't have any moves that are even remotely difficult to not get hit by. You still have to move around with these whack river controls. This boss would be way cooler if you were on this boat too, and you got to control the cannons and stuff. That idea would solve a lot of issues that I have with this boss. Another mini-boss. Again, I think this one is fine. The ram is pretty annoying since there's no way to avoid it. And I think just making a normal enemy slightly bigger and having a lot more health is kinda lame. It is a mini-boss, so I can't say it needs to be any more than it already is. This boss is stupid, dude. Its only attacks are licking you and dropping hazardous turds. You know, like bats are very well known to do. I don't know why it makes this sound when it does its attack. This boss is also super weird and glitchy. I don't know how they managed to make the most basic boss in this game glitch out as hard as he does. More attacks would be nice. A different song than the one used in the Barbarian boss would be nice. The Grey Knights not taking all the gold at the end would be nice. This one is also just a larger version of a basic enemy. At least this time he's got the drip on though. I hate this boss, man. There are 2 phases for this boss. One where he's playing the organ and one where he's actually fighting you and you can actually damage him. He's stupid fast and can be a little difficult to hit. The phase where you're fighting head to head is perfectly fine. It's the fact that he runs at Mach speed to his organ, right as I'm getting in my groove, that annoys me. The cannons are super easy to dodge, and you can't damage him when he's doing this attack, so you just gotta wait around for him to be done. And then you can go back to the fun part of the fight. I do like how the princess in the back is cheering you on. It's especially funny when you're the one getting groomed. Yeah, I'm keeping that in the script. I like the setting on this one, being on a carriage barreling down the road. But again, this boss just doesn't do much. Spamming projectiles while occasionally throwing thieves at him just isn't that engaging. It shooting lasers out of its eyes is a pretty funny detail, since this comes out of nowhere. None of the other trolls have a move even remotely close to this one, and it doesn't even do this during the mills section. But I just wish there was more to this one, especially since this is the last time we see this giant troll, because it's dead. The boss at the end of my least favorite level in the entire game. I'm so over this level by the time we even get to this boss. I don't know why I don't like this one very much. Maybe it's because there's not a whole lot of room to move around in. It feels really cramped, helped by the fact that this guy's hitbox can just extend 50 feet in 1 second. He only has 2 moves and they get pretty stale after a while. But Biggie Bobo, what about the Terminator 2 reference?
An ugly motherfucker.
Oh, you're so right. This boss is a 5 out of 5 stars, actually.
A long, long time ago, there was a volcano.
This one is the first out of 2 bosses in Lava World, my favorite level in the entire game. Based on what I've already said, you might assume I don't like this boss either, but I actually don't mind this one. I know I sound like a crazy person with how inconsistent I am with which bosses I like and which ones I don't, but I just think the noise it makes when you hit it is funny. It's really meant to teach the player how to fight with the beefy sandwiches. Could this one be better? Yeah, obviously. But I think it's a nice change of pace for this level. I do wish there was more time in between this boss and the next, but what can you do?
Rap is just one of my fetishes, like a dragon is pregnant.
Immediately after the volcano fight, we got the dragon and his loyal sock puppet.
I dare!
Who?
Right off the bat, I'll say the sock puppet adds a lot for me. A dragon boss in a game like Castle Crashers is pretty predictable, but adding this layer of goofiness and absurdity actually represents this game as a whole pretty well. My issue with this boss is kind of the same as a lot of them so far. It just doesn't do very much. More attacks would be greatly appreciated. It's also kind of hard to hit him in the first place. The difficulty of a boss should not be in reaching its hitbox. This is a boss that I've heard some people complain about, but I actually quite like. It's at the end of a level that I absolutely love, and I think it's just a really creative concept. Maybe its execution could be better, like most of the bosses I've talked about so far, but I still really like fighting this boss. There's just none other that's even similar to this one. And that makes it stand out on top of being in a level that's already full of unique ideas. This is definitely one of my personal favorites.
While you are looking at my face, I am rubbing my testicles and making love to your fingers. Don't say you're not enjoying it, as I can see you smiling.
Dog, what are we doing right now? This boss is hilariously weak. It doesn't technically have more health than the beetle enemies like I figured in this video, but it's still pretty close. This boss fight is ridiculously easy. It barely does anything. It's so weak, in fact, that you fight 2 of them in a row. That's how little impact these guys have. They have to throw in a second one right after. You bring great shame to your people. This boss was so lame we didn't even get another one until... I almost like this one. Maybe it's because you go without a boss fight for a while, so it's nice to get anything. But this one just takes way too long to kill. If it had legit half the health, I wouldn't have any issues with this one. Learning that you can get the farmers to help you fight this boss was so cool, and I think being able to see how much damage it's taken is really unique. And this is the only boss that has a unique food item, so that's cool, I guess.
You don't want to look at me, for you were torn to stone.
This is another one I don't have much issue with either. This one can feel a little tedious, just like the corn boss, but it's not nearly as time consuming, and you get one of my favorite swords for killing her. I like the little snakes that are flooding the screen by the end, and this one actually has some challenge to it. If anything, I just wish this level was better, honestly. These fish guys are not fun to fight, bro. But this one just suffers from not being super memorable in terms of presentation or structure, unlike most other bosses in the game. Evil Snake Lady is probably the least memorable in the whole game.
Do you know what Ice King means?
Yeah, I know what Ice King means. A big nerd.
I don't like anything about this entire level. Out of all of the levels where you're literally crashing a castle, this is the worst castle that you crash. 2 fights with normal enemies and 2 long corridors, both completely nauseating. Compared to Industrial Castle or even Sand Castle, this one just feels like there's large parts of this level missing, you know what I mean? It feels like Tom and Dan got to designing the last level and were like, meh, let's just finish this game already. This level should have been way longer, but instead it feels like it's over as soon as it begins. And this boss fight is the perfect mediocre cherry on top of this mid-Sunday. Frost King over here has like 3 moves that he does on repeat for what seems like 30 minutes. The only change that happens during this fight is the stupid icicles falling from the ceiling getting faster. Oh, did I forget to mention that you're slipping around on ice the whole time? So it's a pain in the neck just to hit him. This boss feels like Chinese water torture. And no, I'm not overreacting. This boss sucks, bro. And so do the next 2.
Used to draw, hard to admit that I used to draw.
I'm tired of sitting idly by as this boss gets the star treatment. I'm sorry, Painter Boss. I gotta roast you! I am sick of doing this boss. Every time I play through Castle Crashers, this is the boss that annoys me the most. It is so boring. You shoot magic at crummy gifts that follow you around like Obunga for 8 hours straight. Why do these things have so much health? Am I doing this wrong? Is there something I'm missing here? If there is, I gotta be the biggest sucker in the whole Eververse, because I have been doing it this way since 2009. Sometimes I'll intentionally get hit by the drawings because I just want this boss fight to be over. It feels so good when you get to the phase where he runs around. It's so nice when you don't have to wait 3 to 5 business days to actually do damage to this handy-manny toolbox-headed dork. You cannot convince me this boss fight is fun. It's not fun. It's the opposite of fun. It's freaking nuff, dude. Yeah, the animations are pretty funny and charming, but I've seen them already. It doesn't matter to me anymore. This boss sucks. You can't even keep a consistent voice. Also on the wiki, it says this is the only boss to drop food when killed. Are we forgetting someone?
I'm a black Scottish cyclops. They got more and they got the likes of me.
This one I somehow like even less than the Painter Boss. It's a rematch of the Cyclops fight. Remember when I was complaining about that? I think it is cool that something like this is in the game, but dude, it has a really similar problem to the Conehead Groom fight and the Painter Boss, in that very frequently the boss will go into a phase where you can't actually damage him. I hate it when Castle Crashers bosses have phases like this. It makes the fight twice as long. The only enjoyment I get from this boss is trying to get him to squish the Conehead Groom corpse. I do like how the dragon is in the background. It's a nice detail, but other than that, this boss is so lame. That's 3 in a row that I would put in my top 5 worst bosses in this game. Hopefully the next one isn't as bad as the last couple. I'm not going to say this very many times on this channel, so savor this while you can. This boss fight kicks ass. So cool. Such an amazing test of everything the player has had to learn on this journey getting here. The first phase is where you fight typical enemies you've faced throughout the whole game, except they have speed hacks. It's the perfect amount of brutal and chaotic. Then you fight the Necromancer himself, and it is just as stressful. Actually, if you just hold down shield, it's not that hard, but it's still really cool. It feels like an actual duel for the first time in this game. This fight goes so hard. Everything about this fight goes hard. The environment is exactly what an evil Necromancer knight should hang out in. The song, do I even need to say it? After non-stop bangers throughout this whole game, Piercing Laser comes out with a monster of a boss track. It is as iconic as it is fitting for this moment. Just about everyone agrees that this should have been the final boss. It's way more difficult and climactic than the actual final boss. Speaking of which, I don't have much issue with the final boss in Castle Crashers. I like how many phases it has. It makes it so the fight is never too short, and they do progressively get more difficult and more intense. Although I really don't think the orb phase needed to be repeated. I like the fake out with the giant chest, only for a giant spider to be inside. There's a pretty dramatic shift in tone when the chest opens, which I think makes this moment even more effective. Even though I do think the Necromancer fight is more difficult, I can't really complain about the actual final boss too much. So that was all of them. I hope you can understand a little bit more when I say that Castle Crashers bosses just don't hit the same as they did back in 2009. Every single boss in this game, no matter how much praise I can give it, always has a caveat to it, you know? The only boss in this game that comes close to being perfect is the Barbarian boss and the Necromancer. Everything else is either just okay or unabashedly terrible. There's always one or more things that I wish were different. It'll be interesting to see what's going to change and what's going to stay the same when Painter Boss Paradise comes out. I'm willing to bet that not much will be different, so as much as I love this game and its bosses, I can't help but complain about them.
I think I got my swagger back.
Achievement unlocked. You are a failure.